Hello everyone, this is Sage welcoming you to yet another Executive Corner Expert Talks 20-minute roundup, and today we're very lucky to have with us Mr. Eugene Nel, the CEO of Vanadium Resources, with a metallurgical and mineral processing background, and as well joining us today will be the Chairman of the Board, Mr. Jurie Wessels, both in South Africa at present. And we bring you industry leaders, successful business owners, market and equity advocates all under one roof to help you discover the insights of the stock markets and help you understand how one can create passive income streams. So to give you some background, VR8 or Vanadium Resources is a junior vanadium developer who owns 74% of the world-class Tier 1 Steel Poortdrift vanadium licensed project in Limpopo Province, South Africa. And it's an exciting time to meet with you during this revenue reporting season. So let's begin with the questionnaire and not keep our investor audience waiting any longer. The robust growth in the EV and battery segment is quite evident, and a growing interest can be seen among investors for companies involved in exploration and production of battery materials. What is your take on this, and how do you see mid-term to long-term growth in the battery segment, please?
Okay, I'll take that, and Eugene will do the interview intermittently. So we've pre-decided what questions we'd like to answer. Firstly, vanadium is not necessarily an EV element. There we know lithium is the element of choice, but it has got an indirect relevance to it. In fact, a very significant one. And that's purely because electric vehicles would mean very little to the environment if it is, albeit powered by electricity, but the electricity is generated by coal. So it really means only something once renewable energy is being used, and for the powering of electric vehicles. And that's where vanadium plays a massive role, because the sun doesn't shine when you always need the power, and also, of course, the wind doesn't blow when you need the power. So it's a case of storage, and vanadium is suitably or quite eminently suited for achieving storage. It is probably the winner of the lot. There are some other batteries as well, zinc and silica based, saline based, etc. And the other issue that you might ask is to what extent is vanadium relevant to solar and storage generally. Storages can also be peak shaving, where power is generated at times of the day when it's needed. Then the price of electricity is higher, and then when the demand is lower for electricity, then the prices drop, and that's where vanadium comes in as well. So that's peak shaving. On the other hand, it is a source of renewable energy storage, as I've just mentioned. And they're about 100 megawatts of power, as was recently illustrated by a company called VR8 in China. They are storing 100 megawatts of power from solar and mostly solar energy, and that would need about 1,000 tons of Ito-05. Now put that into perspective. The Steel Poortdrift project, which will be of the larger of the primary vanadium producers, would produce about anything between 9,000 and 14,000 tons of vanadium pentoxide per year. So roughly said, that will use about 10% for only 100 megawatts power. It will use about 10% of our production capacity, or some other primary producers about 50%. Now, put it even in better perspective for you. World electricity use is currently about 22,000 terawatts. 1 terawatt is 1 million megawatts. And if only 1% of that production has to be stored in VR8, it would take 2.2 million tons of vanadium. That is half of our entire resource, and we are the largest of the resources available worldwide we are currently aware of. So there's a tremendous upside for vanadium, specifically from a VRFB or a vanadium redox flow battery point of view, besides the steel side of things as well.
The company's getting ready to acquire the processing technology and form a joint venture with TCM Research. How is this technology different from the existing ones used by the companies worldwide, please?
Sage, essentially, most of the technologies worldwide to produce vanadium is based on a roasting and a leach type technology. We produce a vanadium flake. So it is quite energy intensive, and there's quite a lot of off gases, obviously, that's being generated in the standard salt roast leach process. The new technology that we're investigating is essentially a dry process, so it doesn't make use of vast amounts of water, so it's a lot more environmentally friendly in that sense. And then also it does not have the roasting element of it that requires a lot of hydrocarbons, coals, gas for the heating upfront. So it's a much less aggressive type technology based on chlorine gas that's being used, and with all the carbon emissions being recaptured again for reuse in the process, and maximizing the amount of energy and heat that's kept in the process so that you don't require external sources of energy.
And the proprietary processing technology of TCM boasts of zero carbon emissions. Is it really possible to convert the entire processing operation to carbon neutral? And will VR8 also strive to make the whole mining operation carbon neutral?
Well, essentially one has to separate zero carbon emissions from being carbon neutral. The new process has got zero carbon emissions because all the carbon that gets generated gets recaptured and reused in the process. But if you look at the bigger operation, there is still unit processes that makes use of electricity and power, which by its nature is a carbon producer depending on your source. So even though this process gives us a great step in achieving carbon neutrality by reducing the carbon emissions, it's not going to take us all the way to carbon neutrality. And for that purpose, we are investigating a lot of other processes that is linked to this new process, which includes sourcing our electricity requirements from renewables, solar plants that's combined with the whole process. So carbon neutrality is a goal which we will work towards. And this is one great big step at the beginning to get us closer to carbon neutrality. Whether we would totally achieve it, it's going to depend a lot on the industry with new technologies coming in that we can incorporate into the overall process to achieve carbon neutrality on a global mine project scale.
And question 4. The SPD project possesses one of the largest known deposits of vanadium globally, with JORC resource of 662 MT at 0.77% V2O5. How big is the opportunity on the project, considering other mines in different parts of the world are also producing?
I'll answer that one. Just to put the numbers that you've mentioned into perspective for people. The vanadium is in mostly contained in magnetite as a primary source. Magnetite is an iron mineral, and the amount of vanadium varies. Now, the percentage that you see there, that is is what it is in the rock, as we say in situ in our language, in the rock. However, the real important factor is not what's in the rock, but what really happens once it's past its first stage of processing, which is concentration. There, our project is at 2.2%. Many other projects are a bit lower. Some of them much lower than that. And that's really where it becomes important. So it's not really what's the amount of tons that you have in the ground, but how you can concentrate it initially. And that's done by a magnetic separation process. Now, how big is this project compared to others? We have on our website a presentation that will show your viewers where this project lies compared to other primary producers worldwide. And it's by no doubt the largest of all of them. We are not aware of any other projects that's got the right grade, and especially the ability to concentrate as much as ours do. So from a world point of view, this is probably one of the most compelling projects around. Grade is also very important because the grade determines your economics and your operational cost later on downstream in whatever processing methodology you use. And there we are, once again, we believe the second highest grade in the world, the highest being a Canadian company called Largo Resources. Then what is also important because of the size is one has to look at the resource base. We have 662 million tons presently. We have explored that to the fullest extent, and that would then give one long life of mine, multiple lives of mine. We are not working only on a 25 or a constrained life of mine of 15 or 17 years, as some of our competitors do. We can squeeze in 100 years if we wish. It really depends on the economics and how that works out for us initially getting the mine started, and then also the processing side of things. Currently, the market is about 150,000 tons per annum of vanadium pentoxide, of which the primary producers produce about 20%. Now, what I mean by primary producers is in China, you have capacity from the smelting of magnetite or furnace works of magnetite, where they produce a slag, so it's secondary. So primary, they are looking for the iron, but then secondary, they also produce a slag that's vanadium rich, and that's where 80% of the world's vanadium come from. Now, we all know that China is pushing for reduction of their pollution. That is one of the reasons why the vanadium price went up, because there was a strict control over these producers that impacted the price because they couldn't produce as much. And of the 20% of primary producers, there are two, Eugene, correct me, I think it's 2 or 3 in South Africa. So I'm not really sure sometimes because we're not sure what happens with the private market, but there at least are one other public company, which is Bushveld Minerals, and then there's Largo, and then there are some companies in Kazakhstan that produce vanadium as well. Of those, none of them are as large as we are, but the market is expected to grow with up to 220,000 tons in 2025, so roughly about 70,000 tons more than what we have presently. And of that, 30,000 tons per annum would be towards vanadium pentoxide. That is what Bloomberg has predicted in 2018, and they seem to be on track for that with that prediction. Most of that would be going to energy storage, as we know, of about 200 gigawatt hours. Another interesting factor to bear in mind for the future is that the Biden administration in the US has recently, I think yesterday, have announced that he would propose legislation to force power producers to be 80% clean by 2030. If that's the case, that energy needs to be stored, and vanadium at this stage, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, is the primary way of doing it at this stage.
And the company is raising a fund of $2 million to support the acquisition of the processing technology. How will the company be positioned on the exploration front after this capital infusion, please?
No, exploration-wise, we're not going to do much. We have explored that property to the fullest extent possible. It's a very large resource where we are now focused on completing our PFS, which would be announced hopefully within a month's time from now on. We're within budget. We aim to do it by spending 400,000 Aussie dollars, and that's where we are presently. That money then would be used to advance the studies towards the TCM technology that you've mentioned earlier, or Eugene's mentioned earlier, and then also, of course, to start off with our definitive feasibility study, which we expect to be anything between $3 and $4 million. It's our primary focus presently is to achieve that, and we expect that the market will respond positively to our PFS results, and that would place us at a better position to raise funding when required to continue with our DFS at the time that it's needed.
And number 6, are there any supply contracts in place or any supply negotiations in advanced stage for the project?
No, there aren't any in place. We are keeping our powder dry as far as that's concerned. We'll wait for the PFS to come out, and then we will, in our view, be a primary source for vanadium, generally speaking, worldwide in the future. So we don't think it will be necessary to conclude optical agreements which talks about supply, but really is subject to us actually producing it later on. We are forging ahead and want to produce, and we'll complete our studies towards that, and then we will have the people who want our products. They will arrive, no doubt.
Thank you. With the scoping study concluded and PFS underway on the project, how soon can we expect commercial production from the project?
Well, Sage, one has to go and jump through all the hoops and go through all the hurdles, progressing it from pre-feasibility, feasibility, definitive, and then into execution, obviously, because you don't want to miss an opportunity and you want to make sure of your numbers. Currently, our scoping study indicated production rates or production costs of around $3 per pound. We're not seeing that moving much, but to progress through all the studies, we expect to be in a position to start construction by the end of 2022, early 2023. And the construction period for this type of process is typically an 18-month build process. So I think one has to be realistic and say that first production, we do not foresee that before 2024, following all the studies and all the groundwork being done. It's in line with the outcomes of our scoping study that was done, and at this stage, there's no indications that that would change.
And as per the company reports, open cast mining will be the preferred mining method on the project. Is there any mineralisation potential at higher depths of the project? And is there any exploration plan to hunt for vanadium at deeper depths, please?
Well, we're in the lucky position that we don't have to hunt anymore. The scoping study already identified quite a large mineralization at depth, and certain areas that is definitely accessible for underground mining. However, that is not the current focus. So that is a little bit of fat or jam in the bank that we're keeping for future. And we know there's growth potential into the underground and the deeper spaces. It has been proven up and it has been signed off. And during the pre-feasibility study process, we will be identifying these areas and keeping that for the future life of mine and future expansion projects. So we're lucky that we don't have to go hunting. We've already found it.
And would you like to share the short-term to mid-term plans of the company and how they're aligned to the long-term vision of the company?
Yeah, short term, we want to complete our studies and start producing vanadium pentoxide. We are dependent on a processing technology, which at this stage worldwide is salt roasting, but we are also then focusing on the newer technologies, which we think would give us another income stream at least, or maybe a third one, thereby unlocking the full complement of elements in the ore. Vanadium is one of the elements in the ore that's present there. As I mentioned, iron is there as well, 55%, sometimes 58%, depending on where you mine. And then there's titanium oxide as well. The research that we're doing with TCM is aimed at also gaining from the other elements in the ore and producing a titanium oxide or a iron product, whether it is suited for the more niche markets or for the traditional iron ore markets. So that is our short-term focus, to finish these studies, including the salt roast processing and then also the processing potential of the TCM technology. Long-term, we want to be the most eminent producer of vanadium products, including bringing the prospect of bringing down our cost, our OPEX cost, thereby making us much more competitive than anybody else by producing secondary streams of income, which you might ask, why doesn't that happen naturally? Why didn't we do that anyway? And the answer to that is that up till now, it was not possible to produce, as a primary producer, any other element than vanadium. And that is because the process, the salt roasting process, effectively sterilizes the titanium oxide and the iron. It doesn't make it economical any longer to take it further from there. And that's why it's so important to us to do that. We don't want to be a iron ore producer like the primary iron ore producers are in China that produce vanadium secondary. So that's where we focus ourselves, to produce vanadium products, vanadium pentoxide, battery grade products, and then other products that could derive from the TCM technology.
And I know you touched on this a little bit in your answer before, but is the company eyeing any other projects for investment or JVs in the near future?
We exploration-wise, we're not going to acquire other projects. We have got more than enough to work with. We don't want to take our eyes off the ball. We want to focus on what we have, and we are mostly concerned with expanding the offering that we wish to bring to the market, which is not only vanadium pentoxide standard 98.5%, but the higher grade, high purity vanadium that will be used by the electrolyte industry for the VR8. And we might have a look at another technology as well that is different from the TCM technology. We are toying with that, see whether that is something that we would like to do. But no other joint ventures other than possibly that or other exploration. Focusing primarily now on getting it done.
Well, I think the main thing is keep your eyes open for the announcement on the PFS. I think the market would quite enjoy what we're going to bring to them.
Well, we look forward to the results of your PFS in the coming weeks and hope that we get a chance to speak to you again and looking forward to see the effects that will have on the share price. So viewers, please take note. The ticker code for Vanadium Resources is VR8. Thank you so much for joining us. It was absolutely fabulous chatting with you today and really do appreciate your time and valuable insights. With that, it's Sage here signing off for today. Watch this space for more. Until then, stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.